What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So in this video, this is going to be conversations with Ven on the couch, okay? But in this video, I want to go over why I decided to stop competing in powerlifting competitively. Now, this is kind of an abrupt decision, but it was a decision that took me a long time to get to, okay? It didn't happen overnight. For the ones that have been following me for a while on social media, on Instagram, and has seen my progress for the past few years, I went from being a gym goer to a pretty decent powerlifter to becoming a really good powerlifter. So at Nationals this year, I was able to total 860 kilograms at 112 kilos, and I was like giga bloating to that competition. So I was really just truly maybe like a 108 to a 109 kilo lifter. So it was a pretty good performance, and I actually missed one of my squats, okay? So I should have been able to put up around an 880 kilo total. So I got very, very good at powerlifting. My squat, I was able to squat over 700 pounds in December. I deadlifted 793 at Nationals in April, and I benched over 400 pounds, okay? Now, very impressive numbers, very good total. Obviously have the potential to become even better, okay? The potential to total in the 900s if I really wanted to keep going. There were a few things that has shifted my mentality from continuing to pursue being an elite powerlifter to kind of switching my gears into a different part of my life. And I want to go over all the reasons, all the pros and cons to being an elite powerlifter, what it's like being an elite powerlifter, the training, the training life balance, okay? And really what it takes to stay at that level, because it's not like you can get to these levels strength-wise and just never, digress, okay? And I want to really go over all these things. So for people out there that are pursuing powerlifting and they want to get to the highest level, I'll tell you why it is worth it, and I'll tell you why maybe it's not worth it for some of y'all, okay? But let's go back a little bit here. 2 years ago is when I decided to move to Houston, okay? I was living in Massachusetts. I was powerlifting. I built a passion to get stronger, to get very good at this sport. At the time, I was inspired by people like Shawn Mills and, Jamal Browner, and I knew that they were in Houston, so I made a decision to move to Houston. When I moved to Houston, I got placed in the center of the best powerlifters in the country. I was training at Corrupted Strength. I was training alongside, Shawn Mills, Jamal Browner, Russ Swole, some of the best powerlifters in the nation. They were training there at the time. And when I got there, my passion for powerlifting just skyrocketed. I loved it. It was everything that I wanted to get better at. And I realized that if I got really good at the sport, it's going to give me a chance to get, sponsorships, to grow my social media. And I think I didn't have a sense of direction when I first moved to Houston, and I didn't really have a direction with social media as well. It was one of those things where I made a decision in my life that I needed to get to a 700-pound squat. I needed to get to an 800-pound deadlift. I needed to get to a 400-plus pound bench. And at the time, I needed to add basically 100 pounds to all my lifts to get there. I needed to add 300 pounds to my total. This is not easy to do, and I was getting trained by Sean Noriega. I just hired him 2 months prior to me moving, and I knew I was in good hands, and I knew it was going to take a while for me to get there. And I had the aspirations that in maybe a year from that point, maybe even less, I'd get to the levels that I wanted to get to, okay? And then I was immersed in this environment of powerlifters, and, I made social media my full-time thing. I was building my coaching business with powerlifters and lifestyle clients, and I was trying to post more. But through it all, I was really trying to find what my identity is, okay? And, week after week, month after month, as I became more confident who I was and building my identity, and obviously getting really good at powerlifting, I realized, okay, I love powerlifting. I love doing what I'm doing. I'm getting really good at the sport. I'm building traction. People are talking about me. It was all good. It was all very good. And, I competed in the spring last year, and that was the first time where I totaled over 800 kilos. I think I put an 805 kilo total up. And then I had to move out of Houston because I proposed to my now current wife. And that, late summer, I decided to leave Houston to go back home because I wanted to prepare to eventually move to Raleigh because I was planning to get married this year, right? After living back at home for about a month, I decided to move to Raleigh earlier to establish myself here. So through it all, there was a lot of moving, okay? A lot of moving to Houston, back to Mass, then to Raleigh. There was a lot of moving in my life. And the reason why I bring this up is because if you're trying to train and become an elite power lifter or just train at any high level for anything, if you're constantly moving, if you're constantly traveling, it's really difficult. And even when I was in Houston, I was flying around every single month. I was traveling all the time, and it was so difficult to keep up with training when you're traveling every single month. Okay, and I really wanted to have some sort of just peace in my life. I wanted some easier, some more chiller routine, not traveling all the time. And I was almost even getting a little bit tired of social media, okay? So when I moved to Raleigh, I decided to get a normie job. I decided to get a sales job that would require me to have basically a 9 to 5. I'll make good money from it, over 6 figures a year, arguably more than what I was making on social media at the time. And I applied for this job. They hired me. I was making sales for a concrete company. They were selling concrete driveways and other concrete projects, fairly high tickets. So the commissions were really good with a base salary. Couldn't be any happier. I was very happy, okay? I got trained. I got placed in my position, and I started making sales, okay? And I kind of started shifting a little bit more away from social media, but I was still on track to compete for nationals for this year, okay? This is about 6 months prior to nationals. Now, during it all, I was still coaching some athletes. I was still posting on social media, just a lot less. And it was I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult to keep up with everything, right? You have your own business, you're posting on social media, and you're training clients while training at a high level. It was just a lot going on while keeping up with my job, while preparing for a wedding, right? While making enough time for your fiance. It was crazy. It was crazy. And one of the things is like, if I wasn't training for nationals, if I wasn't an elite power lifter where you're like training at a really high level, well, you can go to the gym and get a workout in. That's not difficult. But training at a really, really high level, that's where it's difficult, okay? But somehow, I was dealing with a quad issue and, maybe not like kind of suboptimal training sessions a lot of the times. It was actually not really even enjoyable to train a lot of those sessions. But through it all, I got to my prep. I peaked. I competed. I was able to put up a new total, 860 kilos. Obviously fell a little short. But right before nationals, one of my good friends that I grew up with was like, hey, you need to like stop. Like, and this conversation happened a little earlier on, about 2 months prior when I went on my bachelor trip. But he's like, dude, you got to lock in with your social media. You got to lock in. You got to build a bigger business around it. You got to make more money. Like that 9 to 5 is not going to get you to where you want to be in the future. And, I thought about it and I was like, he's 100% right. And I was trying to grow my business at the time, but I kind of just was spread thin. I was spread thin with my full-time job, with social media, with trying to get on new clients, with not being able to give them enough time. There was so much going on. So I made the decision to quit that job. And I did. And leaving that job at that time, it was right before my wedding. There was a lot of expenses leading up to that wedding. And I wanted to set, me and my wife up for success. So it was quite difficult at first, but through enough work through the past few months, I was able to build a lot of momentum and grow that business, which I'm very thankful for, and it's continuing to grow, okay? The business has, my powerlifting team has been growing. Austin Wilson is one of my athletes that's qualified for Worlds, which is really amazing. It's going to happen in Costa Rica in a month from now, so going to be there. That's going to be awesome to see. And a lot of good things has happened, okay? Social media has been growing. So through it all, going back to the original question, is like, why did I decide to stop competing at a really high level, okay? Well, at this point, I'd have to compete at an event sometime later this year and then set myself up for nationals again next year. But right after nationals, I decided to take a 2-month break, right? Part of the reason was because I'm preparing for my wedding. I had a trip to Dubai planned, and then I had the wedding and then a honeymoon. There was a lot going on there, and I decided to just not train, right, with the program. And, I mean, maybe looking back, maybe I should have. Maybe I should have tried at least. I probably should have. But that being said, when I came back from my honeymoon, this was about 2 months later, dude, I got into the gym, and I was so detrained, and I lost like 20 pounds, like 15 to 18 pounds. It was a lot, right, because I was giga bulking for like 2 years. I get back and I am like weak. And part of the reason why I felt so bad was just being detrained. It wasn't like I just got weak forever. But I felt really bad. I was like, "Hey, Sean, let's get back into training. I'm ready to get going again." So we did. And that first block, I kind of pushed myself probably harder than I should have. And we had a set of 4 on squats for my primary session. And I decided to load 617 pounds. And it was supposed to be around an RP 7.5, 8, but it ended up being like an RP 10. I just loaded too much. That was a bad choice on my end. But earlier that block, that week 3, I actually started getting some really bad flaring up of my left quad near my joint. And that just got even worse after that week 4 session, okay? Now, I carried over that immense pain and strain into the following block, okay, which was last block. So for 2 months, I'm dealing with this annoying quad pain, and I'm getting back to the swing of things. I'm feeling better already, but it was just a pain that was not enjoyable. I was not enjoying training whatsoever, and I had to make this decision that I had to step away from competing because I'm trying to balance out building my business, coaching my clients, and training at this level where, it almost felt like I needed 2 more months of recovery before I could really feel much better in training again. So I was like, I knew that now those 5 blocks before nationals were just not going to be enough to get me to that 930, 940 total. Another big reason why I didn't want to is because I know that to fill out the 120 weight class, I got to put on another 30 pounds, and I really don't want to go through that right now in my life. So it was one of those decisions where, the chance for me to really fill out a 120 and get as strong as possible will always be there. I'm not going to just stop training. I'm not going to stop doing my squats, bench, and deadlift. But I realized that, if I want to put as much focus as possible on social media growth and my team and my own athletes and my clients, and also just not hate going to the gym every single day, then I had to take a step back and really just push all those parts of my life more while still training to the best of my ability, still training at a really high level, but not having this constant thought in the back of my head that, oh, you have to compete at nationals and put up a crazy total or else you're a failure, And it really just almost allowed me to relieve some of the stress off my chest. Now I have full focus onto my social media content, onto my clients, and onto just building my personal brand. So that's going to be my biggest focus moving forward. That being said, I will still train at a really high level. I still want to be as strong as possible. So when the opportunity does come for me to fill out my 120 weight class and just put up a massive total, I'm going to be ready for that. But until then, I have a few other focuses on my side. So hope you guys enjoyed that reasoning. I know it's kind of abrupt, but it's a decision that I had to make. If you're interested in getting stronger and work with me one-on-one to compete in powerlifting or just get into best shape and get as strong as possible, there's an application down below. And if you're interested in growing your social media platforms, building your offer, building your brand and your business online, there will be an application for that as well. And I'll be looking forward to see if anybody's interested in that. I'll reach out to you guys. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.